Did you know that more than half of Americans are worried that they won't be able to retire comfortably? With that kind of statistics, you might be wondering if it's even possible to retire on time, let alone early. I'm Andy Tanner, and in today's video, I'm going to teach you some very important strategies that you need to learn how to retire early. Before we start, it's important to know that retirement is different for everyone. We're all at different stages of life. We have different spending habits. We have different living situations and other factors. But the strategies I'll teach you in this video, anyone can use at any time. The key is to get started now. In today's video, we're going to walk step by step through the path it takes to retire early. And make sure you watch until the end, because I'll give you my number one tip that you can use right now to start making progress towards your financial goals. So retiring early begins first, very first step, it begins with a plan. This is what my wife and I have done. This is what we've helped our students at the Cashflow Academy do. A great wealth plan is the first step to accelerating the day, or coming to that day quicker, where you get to say, hey, I'm done. I'm leaving the rat race. I'm going to do what I want to do. So the first step truly is a plan. At the Cashflow Academy, we have a number of tools that people can use to accelerate their education. And one of them is a calculator that can help you accelerate this plan. So check the link in the description and you can have access to the calculator. In fact, let's hop in and let's play around with how you can build a plan that can get you out of the rat race faster. So we call this the Power of Six calculator, because what it really does is it works around the 6 numbers that can absolutely change your life. If a person learns basic financial education, they'll know that every single person, every single business, every single government, every single school, entity, even charitable organizations, they all have these 6 numbers: income, expenses, and cash flow. They have assets, liabilities, and net worth. As you work on a plan, you'll be reviewing those 6 numbers every single week, and this is how we go about doing it. First of all, set a time goal, and you can make this whatever you want it to be. Maybe someone says, well, normally it takes me 30 years to retire. I want to do it in 10, 2 decades early, or whatever you want to do. Got to think about inflation. The Fed puts this usually at about 2%, and that's the beginning of an accelerated wealth plan to get you to retirement earlier than you thought possible. Now, this next section is the fun part. It has to do with expenses, where we enter annual amounts. Listen very carefully to this concept. Everyone has dreams of retirement, but very few people have a project. What is the difference between a dream and a project? It's very simple. Dreams don't have price tags attached to them. Projects do. So, for example, think about the type of life you want to live in retirement. This will be different for everybody. Maybe you're a person who wants to go out to eat at gourmet restaurants every single meal. Or maybe you're like me and my wife, who like to go to Whole Foods and buy organic foods. Or maybe you're just a mac and cheese guy. But whatever you are, you can put in the amount you want to spend. And this is important because expenses dictate the quality of our life. There's a lot of voices out on the internet that are always telling you to curtail expenses. But when you curtail expenses, your quality of life goes down. The food that you eat, the medicine you provide for your family, the shelter that you enjoy, the technology you get to leverage, the places you get to visit, all are tied to expenses. So ironically, I actually have goals for my expenses to go up over time. That correlates to a better lifestyle later on in life. You want to get there as soon as possible. Take travel, for example. Maybe you have goals in retirement of taking a wild, crazy, fun trip every year. Maybe you look at your spouse and say, let's go to Paris, and let's go for 3 weeks, and let's take first-class tickets, and let's go stay at the Four Seasons in the best suite we can find, and here are the restaurants we want. When you take the time to put a price tag on your dream, that goes from being a dream to a finite project. No matter how crazy, no matter how big, no matter how huge your retirement dreams are, I can put a price tag on it. You tell me what you want, I'll put a price tag on that. When it comes to transportation, if you want to Uber everywhere, I can put a price tag on that. If you want to drive around in a Ferrari, I can put a price tag on that. Taking the time to price your dream is going to be a huge step towards getting that dream sooner in retirement. So let's just put in $10,000 here, and I'll cut and paste this in each of them, and that way we can go really quick. Now, of course, yours is going to be different for sure. And I would encourage you to take the time and thoughtfulness to enjoy this exercise of really building what type of life you want But once you get a price tag on it, it goes from being nebulous to being finite. It now becomes a project that can be worked on and worked toward with the right financial education. So we can see here in this example where I just put $10,000 in every category, the projected total expenses, the amount of money you will need, is $146,279. Now you can make the amount 10 times that if you want. It really doesn't matter. But once you have the project, we can begin to work on that number. So let's fast forward to the income that must answer that expenses. And that's the first number of the 6, expenses. What is our nut going to be to crack? Well, maybe you're going to rely on in from the government, but I wouldn't. Maybe you have pension you rely on, but most people don't. So really, if the government can't help you and your pension is dried up, you're going to have to look at what's in your 401k or in your asset column to make this happen. And so if we need to come up with $146,000 from our asset column, let's just put in a nice round 150. And so that can give us a nice surplus right here, 150,000. Now we have the second number. We have an income to answer our expenses. Now let's look at the rate of our income from our assets. We're going to look at 2 rates. Some people like Warren Buffett love investing, and so he actively participates in that every single day. He gets up in the morning, gets in his car, goes through McDonald's, and if the market's up, he gets a bacon, egg, and cheese biscuit, and if the market's down, he gets the sausage McMuffin, and off he goes to the office because he loves investing. He loves being an active participant, loves the game of seeing how big of a return he can get on his assets every single month. Well, others might not feel that way. They might want to take a less active approach and say, hey, once I'm done, I'm done. I don't want to spend a lot of time with my investments. Maybe this person just wants to buy a stock and get the dividend, or wants to buy a bond and receive the coupon on that bond, or the rate of return on that bond in a very, very conservative way. That's really going to be up to you. If you were to ask my sons what they think they would want, they'd probably go around 10 to 12% between dividends and some conservative option writing. They feel that's achievable. But you may not want to learn about options. You may want to just invest in something very passively. But I'll tell you, this is where you get to play with your plan. Let's say someone wants to be way conservative and they say, well, they think they can get 5%. Well, that wouldn't take much education and it wouldn't take much learning. But I'll tell you what, that means that a person's going to have to accumulate about $3 million, there's the third number, in their asset column to be able to produce that kind of return. The average person, we mentioned earlier in the statistic that the average person doesn't really have anywhere close to that in a 401k. In fact, if you go to Vanguard and you look at their report called How America Saves, you're going to find that most people don't have anything close to that number. In fact, the median balance across America in a Vanguard 401k type plan, the median balance is less than $90,000. So let's put that in there. And now we have a rate of growth that is really a tough nut to crack. So what you can do is you can say, well, with some financial education, maybe I think I can compound more effectively. And that can literally cut the required assets in half. But you get to decide where you want to be. Now, I have some good news for you. There are all kinds of strategies. Once we get our numbers and once we understand the numbers that we need to achieve this goal, you can play with these. You could reduce the time. You could say, okay, let's expand the time. Whatever you want to do, but you can now have a framework that tells you exactly what you will need, exactly what you'll have to do to hit those goals. Now we need a plan to go do it. So once we have this scaffolding and this rough plan of the numbers we'll need to achieve and we know what our lifestyle will be like, now we decide what type of assets we want to buy and the type of education. So step 1, get this plan going, okay? Step 2, start to have a meeting. Every week, my wife and I, this is a great investing tip. My wife and I spend a certain amount of time every week. We do ours on Sundays. That's the best way for us to have time together. And we look at these numbers and we see where we are now with income, expenses, assets, liabilities, cash flow, and net worth, those 6. And we say, how does our financial statement compare to the one we want 5 years from now? And we see what that difference is. And we see which of those 6 numbers we need to work on the most to take what we have now and make it look like we want to have it 5 years, 10 years, whatever date in the future you choose. Once you have that comparison, you now can plan your week. And so we will say, all right, what are the things we want to learn this week? Is there a number on here that we really don't know how to change? Well, let's get financial education to change it. Let's build a team of people that we can consult with that can help us do this. And here's the really good news, is when you look at the rate of compounding, no matter where you are or how little time you have left or how little money you're starting with, there is a rate of compounding that you can plug in that will help you achieve your goal within that time. And the range of compounding can be anywhere from negative, losing everything you got because you didn't manage risk, all the way to a very high number, infinity. Now that sounds bombastic to have an infinite return. That sounds crazy, but I will tell you it happens every day and it happens all around you. In most cases, the higher rate of return we seek, the higher risk we'll be required to manage. But here's the thing, in certain instances, you can break free of that formula. You can break free of those constraints. Take Wall Street, for example. They make their money on fees on assets under management. I mentioned that Vanguard had a report on how America is saved. Well, none of that money is really theirs. There's $11 trillion in 401k programs in the United States. That's called assets under management. They charge fees on that money, so they really don't take any risk, and they get an infinite return. What does that mean? Well, if they make $1,000, and that's their current investment, but their initial contribution, that was zero, which it is, then the compounding formula is as such. $1,000 that they have now minus zero put in divided by the zero they put in gives you a rate of return of infinity. Infinite return, no risk. Well, if you were to ask my two sons what the ideal rate of return would be for them, they would say infinite return, because there are things you can do with compounding and leverage that can get you there. Now, this is easier said than done. And we're not talking about something that's easy. We're talking about something that's possible with the right amount of work, the right team built, and the right financial education. The sky is the limit. I like to think about the Millennium Falcon and the Starship Enterprise in a race. I put my money on the Starship Enterprise. Why? Well, the Millennium Falcon, this is how nerdy I get with Star Wars. The Millennium Falcon has what we call hyperdrive. It can go fast as the speed of light. But the Starship Enterprise has a warp drive where it warps time and space. It invokes this infinity of calculus that's available. So knowing that on the lower end, you'll have some risk and reward, but on the higher end, you can have massive infinite return that eliminates risk, that's worth learning about. And those accelerators give us hope. There are two things that are very important to any wealth plan that it should include. It should utilize compounding and it should utilize leverage. This is where I part ways with people like Dave Ramsey that say, stay out of debt, stay out of debt. If I have a liability column that is empty and I'm debt free, I have no utility in that. It's kind of like fire. He might say, well, don't play with matches because people get burned. But as many lives as fire can take, it also can save people from hypothermia, cook their food, light their way, heat their home. So I look at debt as an accelerator. I look at the leverage of the options market as an accelerator to be managed and to be utilized with wisdom and care rather than run around being afraid and thinking dogmatically that assets good, liabilities bad. In fact, if you believe that the dollar will lose value, the best bet you can make is a short position on the US dollar. I don't know if Apple's going up or down tomorrow, but I can tell you over time, the US dollar will lose value. That makes borrowing money intelligently a very safe bet, actually, if we take a short position on the dollar. So the idea of understanding compounding and the ability to accelerate that compounding, even by, in Warren Buffett's words, 1% is an enormous accelerant in compounding the compounding formula. And so on one hand, we learn the principles of compounding. On the other hand, we absolutely must take advantage of leverage. And those risks are manageable, and that's what financial education does. I'm not going to be one of these guys that wags my finger at you and says, well, you should save more and curtail and have smaller dreams and live. No, that's not creative. That's just discipline. Stop buying lattes. Start buying lower quality foods. And instead of using name brands, go with no name brands. That's not a life. What true financial genius is wealth creation, not simply just curtailing the expense column and waiting for a longer time. This video is about retiring early. Learn how to compound, learn how to accelerate it. Now, in this meeting, you make a plan. You look at your current financial statement, you look at the one we've just built in our calculator, and you compare the two, and you say, here are the tasks we're going to engage in this week. These are the things we're going to buy. These are the things we're going to sell. These are the assets we're going to acquire. And if we hit something that seems a bit above our pay grade, this is the education we're going to engage in so we can play at that higher level. Now, I promised you that I had the biggest tip of all for the end. So let's talk about the number one thing you can do to start this process of acceleration, do it faster. There's a principle called cash flow instead of capital gain. And many people think the key to doing this would be to buy a Bitcoin low and then sell it high and be able to figure out how high it might go and how fast. And some people might want to find that special stock that's cheap that blows up big, and they think that's how to retire early. Well, if you're lucky, I suppose it could be, but I certainly haven't been that lucky all of the time. What I really believe in is compounding, which is reinvestment of cash flow. In other words, instead of trying to buy a golden egg that we hope goes up in value, we buy a goose that we know can lay golden eggs. We take those eggs to buy another goose that can lay golden eggs. Now we have 2, then we have 4, then we have 8. That's where the magic of compounding comes, is reinvestment. So when you learn to cash flow stocks, I can show you multiple different ways to get income from the same stock. As you stack these income streams on top of each other, as Warren Buffett said, even a 1% increase in compounding is enormous when you do the math. Go to the calculator. Check it out. See what a 1% increase can do, and see if you believe that financial education can get you a 1, 2, 3% increase or even more. So when you learn how to buy assets that cash flow, that are independent of depending on prices rising, I don't care what the price of the house does if the rent is consistent. I don't care what the price of the stock does if dividends are consistent. I don't care what the price of the golden goose is as long as I get the eggs. Now, people might say, well, there's no such thing as a goose that lays golden eggs. That's true, but there are real estate investments that can lay golden eggs called rent. And there are stock investments that lay golden eggs called dividends. And there's certainly unbelievable amounts of option premium a person can bring in to use leverage to accelerate and to increase their income streams from being 1 to 2 or 3 or 4. You will be so surprised that when you stack income streams on top of each other and then apply that to your compounding, the number of years it takes to pay for an investment or to achieve a goal can shrink, not just by 1, 2, or 3 years, but as we said, you can take decades or more. Now, if you're watching this and thinking, I need to know how to start investing for cash flow, but I don't know how to begin, well, you're on the right track. I just made a complete beginner's guide to investing in the stock market right here, if that sounds like you. If you found this video to be helpful, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you don't miss the next one.